programme is brought to you by UCL, London's global university.
Now the keynote really is to hear from someone who's overachieved really at every level in life. It's really a great privilege to introduce Sir Clive Woodward. He is known to all of you, and I know many of you are here to listen to him, and he's going to tell us about maximising an individual's potential. He's currently working with us in his capacity as Director of Performance of the British Olympic Association, and we're all looking forward to what you have to say.
Thank you, Faraz, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I think I just want to there's too many individual people to thank, but obviously to Faraz, Monty, Ian, Peter, to name a few, for actually getting this project underway. It was interesting, one of the first person I actually met when I came in this morning was a gentleman over there who will be extremely embarrassed by me introducing him. We've got Richard Hill sitting over there, who I didn't know was coming today. World Cup winner, was in the 2003 winning team. I hope you don't mind. He looked a bit stunned, and I said, "Hi, Richard." I said, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but what are you doing here?" He then pointed out that Faraz had actually done 10 operations on him over his career, and he pointed out also that Faraz was number 3 on his speed dial on his phone. So you can see from a real practical point of view, it was interesting. I've obviously met Faraz loads of times. He never actually told me that the amount of work he'd done on one of our very, very star players. So obviously great to see Richard and everybody else here this morning. I've been asked to speak, and it's been fascinating, and I feel very humble listening to this, listening to other people before me, especially just Hugh and Mike. Just the amount of knowledge that they've got on their subject, which to me is actually inspiring to listen to. I've been asked to really cover this area of maximising the individual's potential. I'm very much going to take you through this from a coach's point of view. Make no bones about it. I'm a rugby coach, so I'm here and I feel very humble addressing the audience I'm talking to today. So I'm going to take you through how I, in the real world, how I look at someone's individual potential. And it's interesting listening to the provost when he spoke first up, to hear about just some initial thoughts and ideas of how some of this stuff that I'm going to take through this morning that I'm doing in the real world could link in immediately to the work that's happening at UCL and UCLH. I'm trying to spot Hilly on now. I just put that in once I saw Richard here this morning. That's obviously a shot that I'm very, very proud of in terms of England winning the World Cup all those years ago. I think the first thing I want to just stress from that team. I took 30 players to the World Cup in 2003. I was able to select before we left from absolutely everyone healthy and fit. And when I announced the World Cup final team, that was after 6 games, I was able to pick from 30 fit players. That does not happen by accident. The amount of expertise we had with the team, not just during the World Cup, but in all the years building up. I pride myself on trying to work with the very, very best people in the sports and medicine and the health areas, because all these little things added up. And I promise you, you do become a far better coach when you can pick from 30 fit players. It's amazing how much your stats go up when everyone's fit and healthy compared to when you've got players who are not fit to play. And that undoubtedly allowed me to do my job properly, and undoubtedly allowed England to win the World Cup, because you just pick your very, very best players, and that's what it's all about. So when I started speaking to what was potentially to happen here, one of the big areas to me, it's been mentioned this morning, yes, the research side is just fascinating and really, really important to us moving forward. Certainly the fixing of players who get injured is very, very important, but equally important, it's been mentioned, is how you prevent injury. In rugby, it's a tough game. You're going to get injuries because it's a tough, violent game at times. But with my role now in the Olympic sports, it fascinates me when I work with athletes in athletics, and the amount of injuries, the amount of, almost without doubt, every person you hear interviewed on TV, they've either won despite their injuries or they've lost because they've been injured. And when you think of most athletic sports, they're not contact sports. There should be no logical reason why we are picking up the amount of injuries that we're getting. And I promise you, from an athlete and the coach's point of view, if you can go a whole year totally uninjured and do all your training properly, you've got a real chance of delivering. If you miss key parts of your time because of injury, the chance of you beating somebody when the margins are so small are very, very small. But I was lucky enough to be in charge of a team, but what I passionately believe in, I hope this goes the right way, is this: that great teams are made up of great individuals. So whilst I was able to sort of create this team, not only the players, but all the expertise behind the team, behind the scene. You know, I believe in this. I believe that you've got to concentrate on the individual, and this is what I want to really concentrate on today in terms of my talk to you this morning. I created this. This was very interesting what the provost said this morning. I created quite a long time ago what I call a winning profile. And what a winning profile was this, trying to explain to myself, but also the people who worked for me, what I call the DNA of a champion or a winning profile. And what it is, it looks like this. This is very much my own kind of work. It's come over from a whole kind of a lot of experiences, both in business and in sports. But what does a kind of winning profile look like? And it looks like this, and I'll take you through these 4 key areas. And I hope people back can see this. This is character, criteria, and coaching. And I'll kind of unravel this as we go through. Below the red line, you've got here talented, ability, and skill. And what I mean by that is this, that everybody in this room is talented. There's no doubt everyone in this room has the talent to do their job. I meet thousands of athletes who are talented. Somebody is doing fantastic work behind the scenes, because I think all the people who I know in the room who are lucky enough to be dealing with Olympic athletes, we are producing bucket loads of talent. But so is the rest of the world. And the way I describe talent is, have you got the ability to do this task or this skill? And for my coaching vernacular, have you got the actual skills? Can we develop these skills? But my favourite line is this, and this is the one I preach to athletes and coaches all the time. The talent alone is not enough. Talent gets you into a team, talent gets you into this room, in whatever role you play. And what I'm really interested in is what happens beyond talent. Normally at this lecture I talk about where does talent come from, but after listening to Hugh's talk I decided to just drop that slide out of my presentation. But I'm very, very clear in terms of just briefly on talent. When I talk about where this talent comes from, and obviously you're trying to identify talent as young as possible, but I just go through about five key things. Yes, definitely genes, and I'll say no more than that after Hugh's presentation. Definitely genes. Definitely your background, which is nature. Definitely your background, the environment you were brought up with. On top of that, there's what I've seen, normally there's some sort of influence from driven parents or driven guardians or someone close to you who's able to drive that forward. There's certainly consistency of coaching from an early age. There's been all sorts of great studies done on the myelin effect, which you'll understand far greater than I would, in terms of the earlier you can start to coach young people in very repetitive skills, the better they will actually become. So you can start to look at where this talent comes from, and there are some pretty key things to look at. But I just see that as the starting position, not the finishing position. Because there's so many athletes I meet who actually believe that's it. I'm here because I've got this incredible talent, but that is it. I think, and I try to measure and look for 3 other key things on top of having the talent. And make no bones about it, you can't drag someone off the street to make an international rugby player. You've got to have this talent, you've got the ability, you've got the skill to do the job. But I look at for three other things that we want to look and measure. And we do this, we use this psychometrics test. So say, psychometric testing in the business world is not new. I went to Loughborough, did a degree in sports science, but I went into the business world because of my rugby, because it was an amateur game then. And I remember having all these psychometric tests back in the early 80s when I joined Xerox, trying to find out this DNA, what was kind of between my ears. So it's not new in business, but in sport it's very new. And I think if you went sort of public on what I'm telling you now, you would probably be bracketed with all sorts of very, very strange people in terms of how you go about this. But I think there's a huge amount in this which I want to share with you. So we do these. We've created this model. I work with one company that's based in the States, and we've basically devised this test where it takes about an hour and a half to do all these questions. And what it's measuring for is the 3 following things. The first is this, and these may seem very straightforward, and I make no apologies, they are, because I do think most things in certainly sports are very, very straightforward. The first thing it measures for is it's a bit of a mouthful. It's a thing called teachability. And teachability is quite simply your ability to take on knowledge or want to learn. And if you have that in your current profile, You graduate from what I call talented, you graduate into what I call a student. And in my coaching words, quite simply, if you've got the ability to want to learn and take on knowledge, you've got a sponge between your ears. If you haven't got that, you've got a rock between your ears. So you're either a sponge or a rock. And the point I'm trying to make is this, is that people can change. We don't just profile individuals once, because people will change with their environment, the people who they're working with, the people who are coaching them. And sometimes you may start working off with an athlete or a coach who are sponges. Most people who join new organisations are sponges, because you come in with all this kind of hunger for knowledge to impress and all this. But often what happens, it certainly happens in sports teams, the longer you stay in a team, you can change from being, you can go from being a sponge to a rock. And when you get a rock in a senior position in any organisation, you are going to struggle to really move forward. So what we're looking for is can you measure this, and I think you can. Please don't mix up this with your what I call intelligence, because in Olympic sports, I'm very lucky to get across a lot of sports now, and I will meet sometimes some very young athletes who've got very little education. Mike has worked with some of the boxers, and they won't mind me saying, some of these kids live in caravans, they've left school at 14 or 15. But when you speak to them, their passion for their sport, their knowledge of what they do is fantastic. And they do have the ability to learn and take on knowledge and become sponges. So it's not about being bright, it's about passion, understanding. I have no bones about it, and I made this very clear to everyone. I'd get on a plane tomorrow and fly to the far side of the world if it meant I had the smallest percentage of learning something that would make me a better coach or would influence the performance of the team. So you have to have this sponge and the passion and obsession for what you're doing. But make no bones about it, sorry. Sometimes some of the talented people I've met in the sporting world are sometimes become unteachable. And if you become unteachable, you don't have a passion for learning and knowledge, I believe you're going to stay below that line with the many thousands of other people. In Olympic sports, there's fantastic examples, and they won't mind me mentioning them. The Steve Redgraves, the Paula Radcliffes. These are athletes who, at a young age, were not the most talented. They weren't at the top of the tree when they were even sort of in the ages of 14, 15, 16. They were able to take their talent to a whole new level by what I'm discussing this afternoon. And the whole world is full of people who at a young age were incredibly talented. You go, wow, they're going to go on to be absolute champions. But they never make it because they just stay, because they become unteachable. And so I think knowledge is everything. And the one thing I'd say about knowledge, I think potentially in the way we educate our kids in sport can be improved. And it's based on what I've just explained to you, because what I think, and these are very kind of rough figures, I think when you're teaching sport, almost without exception, the most sport is taught in the pools, on the playing fields, in the boxing rings, in the gym. It's almost 100%, which is fine. I think it should be just a little bit different than that. I think maybe 75–80% of sport should be in those arenas, 20–25% should be in the classroom, where young kids are learning exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it, and understanding it, as opposed to just doing it. Because most of the activities that take place with kids, if you think about it, take place when the coach is not there. Most of the times they do their skills, the coach is stood next to them. So unless they know why they're doing it, what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, the chance that they won't do it properly when the coach isn't with them. So the more knowledge you can put into a child, so I'd like to think, and maybe what the work we're doing here going forwards could help this. I'd like to think you could do an O-level in football, rugby, cricket, swimming, athletics. At the moment you've got O-levels, A-levels in physical education or PE, but can you do them for individual sports if you've got a talent in that sport? So you can get far more on the academic side of what this actually means. So I think this is a huge area. As I say, you kind of graduate to a student. I'm going to show you now what I call an iconic shot, and Richard may have seen this one before, but probably Richard hasn't seen this before, because one of the first things I did, just to kind of get into this stuff, when I took over the rugby team, I was the first full-time coach in 1997. The game was amateur. I came from obviously a rugby background as a player, and I was a pretty new coach, and I came from a business background. But one of the first things I did was insisted all the players were given laptop computers. At the time, I was absolutely ridiculed. The media had a field day, because all these big lumps like Hilly and Martin Johnson are walking in the hotel carrying these little laptop computers. I can see the headlines in the papers now, what's he doing now? what on earth has a laptop computer got to do with playing rugby? And why is he not giving them more raw meat? Why is he not putting a scrummage machine in the garden? What has a laptop computer got to do with playing rugby? I've always thought whoever tends to win in IT tends to win. You know, once you've got the talent. So I was always very clear that I wanted the players to really get in to the IT side of things. And when we did the kind of survey when they first took over, this was back in '97, so we're going back 13 years. Less than half the players had any idea of how to really use a laptop computer. And the players from Leicester, actually it's my club, so I can say this, they'd never heard of a laptop computer. So it was quite challenging, and Richard would have gone through all this, so we brought these laptop computers in, and everywhere we went around the world, we used to use them, we used to bring trainers in to get this education side of the players up. So whilst I was doing it for the right reasons in terms of the IT skills, what I was really trying to find out, who are the sponges, who are the rocks? Who are the players who are going to go, we're not going to do this, what on earth has this got to do with playing rugby? Well, who are the sponges going, okay, we get this, we're going to really move this forward. And I'll show you, I say, this is an iconic shot. This was the then England front row. This shot was taken on a training camp in Brisbane. And I hope you can see this. But these players' fingers are seriously big. This is quite challenging to teach these guys skills. You've got Richard Cockrell here, who's now the head coach at Leicester. I think he's thinking, if I stare at that computer long enough and hard enough, it will burst into life in a minute. You've got Graham Rowntree, one of the England coaches now, and Darren Garford. So it's challenging, but you're trying to find out very, very early on who are the sponges, who are the rocks. And to be fair to the Leicester players, especially those three, when we actually showed them what was available on the internet, the uptake in knowledge was very quick indeed. So that's the first thing. Teachability. Can you graduate from talented to a student? And this is something that I like to measure and stay on top of. The second thing is this lovely word pressure. Pressure. I think how players play under pressure, how you perform under pressure is absolutely a key thing we have to study. And if we've got players, or a player who can play under pressure, I call them a warrior, so they go from being talented to a student to a warrior. And I remember quite a long time ago, I was sitting where you were and listening to someone talk about this, and he came up with this line, and he says, it's your job as a coach to try and take pressure off your athletes or off your team. Now, I was sitting back there as kind of probably a recent athlete, player, and at the time I just said, that didn't fit comfortably on my shoulders at all. And now with experience, I think that's complete and utter nonsense. It's not your job as a coach to take pressure off your players, it's the complete reverse. I think it's your job to put massive pressure on your players. Because when you think about winning the World Cup in 2003, or more recently going to the Winter Olympics or Beijing, you know, I'm there and I'm seeing these athletes get up on this morning. This is a big deal. You've got athletes who spend their whole life and they're about to go into battle to try and win a gold medal. And these events may last a few seconds. You know, and they spend their whole life with this one moment. You can't just say, no pressure today, it's just another fight, another race, another game. The pressure is huge. The pressure is massive. You know, and you can probably relate to what we've been seeing recently over in South Africa. The pressure is huge. So the sooner you can train individuals how to perform under pressure, the better you're going to find it. And the sooner you actually get into this, understanding pressure is good, that this is why we're doing all this. We want to actually get to this maximum pressure moment and outperform anybody else. That is what it's all about. So can you coach this? And I passionately believe you can. And one of my favourite sayings, I'm sure he'll be smiling when he hears all this stuff, because he's probably never seen this in college. I'm presenting this now, but one of my favourite sayings in all coaching is a very English word, teacup. And teacup stands for this, thinking correctly under pressure. Because the whole thing about pressure is how you think, and can you make the correct decisions. Now I'm talking to the inverted here, because you've got top surgeons and people doing all sorts of stuff under pressure. You've got to make the right decisions. You've got to make the correct decision. So you've got to make the correct decision. How do you do that? Is it actually coachable? And I think it is. I'll just give you a couple of ideas why I think it is coachable and how you can actually do it. We went down and we started. I'm from a service background. My father was in the Air Force, so I'm very, very comfortable with the armed forces. And I think there's no one in the room, you know, who doesn't actually totally much respect for our armed forces. But kind of the best of the best of the best, the Royal Marines down in Livingston, they absolutely believe they're the best in the world, bar none. That is their DNA. And when we went down there, and I went down and I did quite a bit of work with them in preparation for us going down there, and I still go down there now, I still work down there. We did not go, and that's, by the way, that's the rugby team getting on the Sea King helicopter, that's not the Marines, that's us lot getting on. We did not go down to work for the Royal Marines to show how tough we were. I knew we had a tough team, we've got a tough player here. We knew we were physically tough, we didn't have to go down to prove anything. But when you get to know the Marines, without making it too simplistic, half their training is the stuff you see on telly, all the tough stuff. I mean, these guys are brilliant athletes, they're marathon runners, they can run forever with big packs on their back, they're brilliant athletic people. But half their pressure is exactly what I'm talking about. How do you think correctly under pressure? So when you think you're under pressure, in the medical world as a surgeon or a doctor, when you think I'm under pressure as a coach, trying to win that game or that one moment, when you're under pressure as an athlete, the Olympic Games, World Cup finals, think of the pressure these guys are under when they're jumping out of helicopters in Afghanistan. Because they make one wrong decision, the chances are they don't get back on the helicopter. So half their training is how you think correctly under pressure. And not only do they not get back on the helicopter, but maybe the whole team doesn't get back on the helicopter. So we went down there, we did a whole load of exercises, which I could take anyone in this room down to do, male, female, because it's all about how you think, and can you make that correct decision. And just some of the stuff we started to adapt from the rugby point of view, and let me just think this through with you. In the rugby room, we used to create what I call a war room, which was think of your best boardroom. No matter where we were, home or away, we created a room. And when the players came into this room, this was a serious room, this wasn't just a meeting, this is where we're doing business, this is talking about what was going on. But on the wall, I tend to have various posters and things, but I'd always try and have a clock, I'd always have a scoreboard, I'd have a whiteboard of some descriptions. And in any meeting, any time, and I do this one-on-one with players as well, in any meeting, any time, you say, just stop the meeting, here's the situation, and you say, clock, minutes ago. Scoreboard. Scotland 12, England 10. Here's the situation. And you set the situation up, and you ask the player to just stand up and say, what would we do in that situation? So this is like thinking, training. And the player has to, you almost put a stopwatch on him. Because you've got to make that decision, because this is a game situation. Minute to go, 2 points down, there's the situation, what do you do? He would then discuss what he'd do, probably get a huge amount of abuse and banter from the rest of the team, but then we discuss it as a team. And quite simply, you wouldn't want to leave the room until we absolutely, as a team, knew if that was a situation, that's what we would do. And you do the same with individuals. And you get the people I call warriors to think all the time. And quite simply, my definition of a warrior, there shouldn't be anything you ever come across that you've not at least thought through before. Because people collapse under pressure, normally because they come across things they've never experienced. Now, you can't possibly experience every possible thing, but you could have definitely thought about everything. And if you thought about it, the chances are you will make the right decision. If you've never thought about it, it just happens, the chances are you will make the wrong decisions. And if my kids, I'm lucky in everything I've done, I think, but I've got 3 great kids. If they were sitting here, they'd cross their legs, fold their arms, and go, oh my God, he's off again on his teacup stuff. Because I've almost brought them up on teacup. Because this is just common sense. Because I'm saying to them, you know, my oldest girl's far too old now, she's 23, or Joe's 21. I said, you know, in nightclubs, you know, what's happening if people come up to you with drugs? What are you going to do? What if? That's all you're talking about. Now, the chance if they thought through clearly what they're going to do, under that pressure situation, they'll make the right decision. And that's it. So it's not rocket science, it's people thinking. And what to me is inexcusable is people who you see under pressure situations who have not thought through what you could possibly do. You know, is it possible, just tell me, is it possible for someone to walk through that door now with a gun or a knife? Is that possible? Yes. So what do? Do we just sit here and die? Or will someone actually thought through, hang on, we've got to think correctly about this, we've got to make an instant decision because these are big calls. And this is what it's all about, you're finding people who can perform under pressure. But a lot of it is in the head, you've got to think through every possible scenario. And you know you've cracked it as a coach when you've got players talking about what if. And this is what defines the actual warrior. So, the last thing, when you graduate to a champion, is this lovely word, again my favourite word along with teacup, is just this word attitude. People have this incredible attitude, or this will. Now again, I've heard many people say, and hopefully Hugh will back me up here, you know, you're not born with this. You may have one or two genes that are doing whatever, something magic in Hugh's language. But this is something that can be taught. People can be taught attitude. This is the X factor. You don't necessarily have it. And we measure 10 things under attitude. Here's just 3 of them. I'll just go to the top one. Chris Hoy, you know, because I was dead lucky in the rugby team. We had incredible players. So, you know, Hilly sitting here, and Martin Johnson, Johnny Wilkins. We had incredible players. But when you get to meet athletes in other sports, you realise they have got there's a real common denominator. If this guy played rugby, he would be in the first team. His attitude is absolutely fantastic. And if he hasn't been a rugby player, he would make it. But we measure 10 things. Here's just 3 of them: obsession, responsibility, and enjoyment. I'll just give you this word obsession, because a lot of people talk about obsession in our country, and it's seen as kind of something that's wrong with you. I think there is a medical term, obsessive something, but there's something wrong with you. I think obsession is a great word. You know, I've got myself extremely lucky in almost everything I do, in terms of family and everything else. But in terms of my job, I'm totally obsessive. I want to do the best at it. Absolutely obsessive. I want to be better than anybody else at what we actually do. And it comes from understanding what sport's about. And I just use one example before I close from the Winter Games. And here's a guy, Swiss athletes who won the men's downhill. Defarge 1:54.31. Hope you can all see this. Normally I'd play this. This actually just this little thing plays a tune normally, but we haven't got the sound working, so I'm not going to bother. But here's the guys coming over first, Defarge. These are the guys coming over in second, third, all the way along. That is 1 second. That is 1.25 seconds. So if I played that, imagine 1.25 seconds, you could get this tune going, boom. And these are guys going over the finish line. So if you think this is the absolute Grand Prix of the Olympic Games, the men's downhill, there's the guy finishing first. The difference between coming first and 19th at the end there, just over 1.25 seconds, you know, it's just fractions of seconds. So you have to be completely obsessive in every single thing you do that's rated a performance. Everything. And you can't allow the classic no if onlys. You've got to work with the very, very best people and understand that all these little things will make the difference. And you can't ignore anything. And that's why I believe, you know, if we can get this partnership really working well, I think this will allow all these bits to all add up and really take potentially sport in this country to a level that we probably at this stage can't even imagine it. I think it's that important, this partnership with what's happening here. It allows us to really look at things in a different way from an academic point of view, but also from a very, very practical point of view. So that's my presentation. It was very much based on, that is not theory, that's how I work. When I talk to coaches, athletes, I try and put one of those 4 categories: where are you, and what are we trying to do to get you to the next level. And if I just finish off with one last mention, I did meant to mention this in my introduction. One of the people from the BOA who was very much instrumental in getting us to where we are today was a lady called Bev Salt. She was seconded to the BOA from AstraZeneca. She did a brilliant job in getting it to where we are now. She's moved on. We're very lucky to have Simon with us. Simon's at the back. Simon, just stand up. Simon is also on secondment from AstraZeneca. He's completely taken up the reins from Bev to keep this project moving on. And I can say publicly, certainly from the BOA's point of view, we know we're very much at base camp, if I can mention the altitude. We're right down there, so we're pretty okay at the moment. But we want to get right at the top of Everest, and we know that is not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of opportunities and issues on the way to get where we really want to get to, and certainly Simon will lead it from the BOA's point of view, and we just hope with everyone supporting we will get the job done. But from a pure coaching point of view, athlete's point of view, I cannot stress how important this could potentially be if we were to get this right in really delivering performance, not just in 2012, because that to me is almost a stone throws away. This is a really long-term project, hopefully, that will take sport in this country to a whole new level. And just thanks again for inviting me, and thanks for really pushing this forward for all those who are involved from UCL and UCHL. Thank you so much. Thank you.
To round this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our panellists to just give us a sort of summary comment with regards to the question that we've been proposed at the end here, which is delivering Olympic gold clinical academic drivers. So I think what we're really looking here is that the triumvirate of the Olympics and therefore sports in the broadest sense, health and healthcare and health delivery and academia, and how might it all work for the greater good. Now, the first time I went to see Clive, when we were trying to see if we could accommodate the British Olympic Science and Research Unit here at UCL, Clive at the end there, we sat down in a room in the basement of a building, and I just asked him straight. I said, well, what do you think UCLH could do for you? What do you want out of this? And he said, it's quite simple, we just want more gold medals. So there we are, simple metric. Clive, could you just expand on that?
Just quickly, I just when we first met, I was very excited when I obviously knew the reputation of both the organisations down here. To me, it was very straightforward. Number one, research to really. What we can deliver from the BOA's point of view is not theory. People who really do need help on research projects across a whole range of sports. Hopefully you'll get some, from my presentation, you'll see just some of the stuff I've been touching on in a very basic way, but a very practical way. So the research side is absolutely huge, and to work for all our sports to start to really apply real issues and opportunities we've got would be great. Then the second thing was, I think I mentioned it, you know, it drives me nuts when you're out there and you're speaking to certain athletes and they've say got an injury, and I say, where are you going? And they're going off to America, they're going off to Germany, and they're rolling off these names. And I say, well, why are you going there? And they say, well, so-and-so went there. There's no logical reason why they go to these parts of the world to get knee surgery and shoulder operations. And it just seemed to me, you know, I just think we have the expertise in this part of the world, especially in London. So if we can start to actually more formalise where this real expertise are in terms of the actual, and these are people who are injured. So that's the second thing. And lastly, I mentioned it drives me absolutely crazy as a coach, the amount of players that are injured through where they shouldn't be injured. And as a coach, the lack of knowledge that you've really got, if you're honest, about, and most injuries tend to happen in training because you're doing the wrong things with players, and there's just total gap between what we should be doing as a professional coach. And I think, and maybe one of the questions will come, the England football team, to me, I'm a passionate football fan, and I said I'd take my band off after England lost, and I just can't take it off, I'm so mad, so it's still on my wrist. But watching someone like Lampard, he just didn't seem to be the same player. I just think he was physically and mentally drained. So he's arrived at the biggest tournament of his life where he should be absolutely firing on all cylinders. Now that's not happened, and you can't just sit back and it's one of those things we play long seasons. Every player plays long seasons. There's no real, I don't think, scientific process in place to absolutely guarantee that those top players were arriving on that day, they're absolutely, you know, eyes out and all that stuff. It just didn't happen. And I just don't think we're anywhere near working enough with your side of the business. So that's why I was quite excited, Monty, about, or more than quite excited about the potential of this project if we can really get it off the ground.
To find out more about UCL, please visit us at itunes.ucl.ac.uk.